Travis Wayne Goodsell. This is part 2 of the symbol of Lucifer in the LDS Mormon Church. I'm able to do it this morning because I'm getting faster in my run time. 10 minutes faster consistently. So yeah, I've got some time. Alright, symbolism is important. It's communication. That's what communication began in early human history. They used symbols to represent what they wanted to communicate. In the beginning, it was simplistic. A stick figure for a human. And those symbols had to be understood at least culturally, if not universally, so that when a culture comes across another culture, they can communicate despite having different languages. And so this is why an understanding of symbols is important. You can't just have an arbitrary interpretation by individuals in a culture for symbols, because you can't communicate that way. Everybody has their own definition and interpretation, and you can't communicate unless everybody understands all the arbitrary definitions and interpretations. And that's no good for communication, because when you get introduced to other societies, the other society can't understand you, because they don't understand why you're using a symbol under their definition in a different definition. So, for example, this right here, Star of David. Star of David, it has only one interpretation. It's referring to David. Now, there are multiple understandings behind it that even Jews do not fully grasp. I mean, it's represented in the form of a star, but it's used by the two triangle shapes, one pointing up, one pointing down. The two triangle shapes come from the Paleo-Greek or Paleo-Hebrew triangle. So there's two triangles, and if you know Greek, then you're familiar with delta, D. That's what it's referring to, is the letter D in the Paleo-Hebrew alphabet. And so David, having two D's, is symbolized with the two Paleo-Hebrew script letters for D. They're combined together because of the Wa, or Vav if you want to call it Aramaic. But again, that Wa is Semitic. Paleo-Hebrew is different than Semitic Hebrew. But the symbol is the tent stake that holds up a tent. And so likewise, the two stars, or the two triangles rather, are joined as part of that symbolism for David. So the Star of David represents King David. Now you'll notice that there's a circle around the Star of David. This changes its meaning. It's no longer the Star of David. It now becomes the Shield of David. As a Shield of David, it's referred to in Hebrew as the Magen, but a shield is worn by soldiers who defend the king. And so you're talking about someone who is a defender of King David. Interestingly, in Paleo-Hebrew, Brown, Driver, and Briggs define itch on my foot. Define this new word with the addition of the circle before the two triangles as a restoring prophet. Not a regular prophet, the Nevi'im, but a restoring prophet. Moses was a restoring prophet. And Moses was also a king, a Melchizedek. So righteousness is understood as Zadok from Hebrew, and thus Melech Zadok, king, righteous. But it's not righteous king. It's referring to the position of a high priest. So here you go again, Joseph Smith revealing he's a translator. In Abraham, he talks about Abraham wanting to be a righteous person and wanting to be a high priest. Righteousness and high priest, you'll notice, are being used synonymously in the Book of Mormon and in the Book of Abraham. The Smiths knew and understood this concept. And so Melchizedek is a king and a high priest. And thus Melchizedek priesthood, and I went over this, it's the Egyptian god Amun in the lengthened form, king, high priest. And so restoring prophet for the shield of David. And thus is the symbolism for the latter days when a Christ, an anointed one, a king, will rise up and be like Moses and restore the kingdom of David, a restoring prophet. And so when we get to Russell M. Nelson, and he gives the church a brand new symbol. It's not an arbitrary meaning. He specifically gives us the precise meaning that we are all supposed to take from it, that we're all supposed to be in harmony with. So Mormons, you can't go and recreate his meaning, because he gave it in that explanation when he brought it out. And so this isn't like a child. This is the president of the church who's giving a brand new symbol to Mormonism, and he is giving you the interpretation of it so that there is no misunderstanding. There is no arbitrary interpretation that can be given by it. And so what did he do? He started with the cornerstone, because that's what you do when you build something. He started with the cornerstone. What is the cornerstone? The church is the cornerstone, with him as the president of the church. The cornerstone. What did he put on top of the cornerstone? What is being built upon the cornerstone which he defined as the church? Jesus. Jesus is built upon the church. And he had the arch, so that it's the resurrected Jesus coming from the tomb. A resurrection symbol. He is resurrecting Jesus, being built upon the church with him as the president. There is no misunderstanding. He created an idol god and called it Jesus. Because he created it, because he said so himself. Jesus is built upon the cornerstone of the church. Jesus is no longer the cornerstone upon which the church is built. Jesus is now built upon the church. There is no confusion. There is no, oh, it was just a slight misunderstanding, something like a child would make a mistake on. No, he's the leader of the church. He gave you the interpretation. There is no misunderstanding. He gave you an idol god to worship, Mormons. And does God love idols? No. You know that passage, don't you? There's one person in Mormon theology who loves idols. Lucifer. President Russell M. Nelson presented Lucifer in General Conference. And I had been doing videos and talking to my second ex-wife, joking about what if Nelson presented Lucifer in conference? Would you still say that the church was true? We now know the answer is yes. Mormons would still stay with the church, which is now run by Lucifer. Despite the warnings in the Book of Mormon, despite the warnings by Joseph Smith, Mormons still support and claim membership in the Church of Lucifer Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so the symbol of Lucifer is important to understand now that Nelson has revealed Lucifer is the head of the church, is the God that gives him revelation for the church. Which now explains why he shut down the church, shut down the bishop's storehouses. And yes, there may be some of you who claim you are getting food assistance from the church still. But on the church's website, they specifically said we're closing it down to comply with social distancing, when they should be setting up a system with their trillions of dollars, which again, that's the Church of Lucifer. Pay attention to the Book of Mormon, Mormons, which you say you love and call true precepts, because you are lying to us when you bear your testimony. You are bearing false witness when you say the Book of Mormon is true. Because Nelson just exploited you in this last conference. He now made it so that you have to choose between the Book of Mormon or him and his Lucifer God. And so, as I discussed in part 1, the inverted pentagram is the symbol of Lucifer. Just as Nelson altered the inverted pentagram to have his God, an idol, which he calls Jesus. And again, wolves in sheep's clothing. The wolf does not deceive the sheep by dressing up as a wolf. He deceives the sheep by dressing up as a sheep. But the symbols are universal. They are understood under one interpretation. And so if somebody is trying to redefine a symbol, then you know that they are the enemy, because they are trying to confuse people. They are trying to misinform and disinform people. They have bad intentions when you misinterpret symbols because you're trying to deceive. So the inverted pentagram only has one interpretation. It is a falling star. It is turned upside down. It's no longer a regular pentagram, it's an inverted pentagram, and that's why they call it an inverted pentagram, is because it's turned upside down. And therefore the symbolism changes. It's no longer a star of light, it is now a fallen star of light. And so yes, that's why Isaiah 14:12 says, "Why art thou fallen from heaven?" And in the English, which comes from the Greek, it's referring to Lucifer. In Hebrew, it's a different one. And I think I have to get to that. Yeah, I have an arrow after Goddess of Love where I'll talk about it. Because remember, I had written out all of the notes, and so I didn't put them in an exact order other than to have arrows from which to go to next. So bear with me. And so some of this is going to be repeated. And so Lucifer is the symbol of the Illuminati, as I've gone over. And the Illuminati infiltrated the Scottish Rites Lodge, and the Scottish Rites Lodge infiltrated Joseph Smith's organization. And they took it over. And they used the symbol of the inverted pentagram to illustrate that they had conquered Smith's organization. Because it was Smith's organization that prevented the Illuminati Scottish Rites threat to America. And I've gone over that in the Real LDS Church History playlist. And so Lucifer means light bringer. And like I said, with the pentagram, they are star symbols, and the holiness to the Lord parchment that Joseph Smith Sr. had for the family, that was a star chart. He was into Jewish mysticism, which yesterday was a Jewish mystic holiday. Lag BaOmer, which had a star sign on the same day as the holiday. And I went over that yesterday for you. But Lucifer means light bringer, and it's referred to the symbol of Venus as the falling star, because Venus hovers in the morning sky. We don't typically see Venus during the daytime, and so we only see Venus in the morning. We'll occasionally see Venus in the evening sky, but for the most part we see it as the rising sun, and as the replacement or the forerunner sometimes for the rising sun. The concept of the Christ, who is to restore the kingdom of David, is also understood as a morning star, a rising star. The Egyptians used it as the star Sophis, Sirius. I think they called it Sophic, or Sophos. Anyway, Sirius, the dog star. And that's where the Constantine got the idea to give Christ the birthday of Christmas, is because of the unique symbolism of Sophis with Orion's wise men stars during Christmas time. The planet is named Venus for the Greek goddess. The Greek goddess, Venus, is the goddess of love. And it's not brotherly love, it's sexual love. And it's what it's referred to. And so now we can get to the Hebrew version of what's being referred to in Isaiah 14:2, because this gets involved with the story of Lilith. Lil, with a T at the end, the Tau, in Paleo-Hebrew, or Aramaic, or Greek, the Tau being the same letter, is for the feminine. Interestingly, Paleo-Hebrew has been corrupted over time, and so there's both interpretations as a grammatical termination for feminine singular, which came from Egyptian, as well as feminine plural. And so you have to understand the context to identify whether the author is using it in the singular or the plural sense for feminine. And so Lil is the original root word. And so Hallel, HLL, is the Hebrew word that is used. And it's referring to the Lilith. Or, as Paleo-Hebrew, as I've deciphered, the H, which in Paleo-Hebrew is the flail that you use to swipe away flies with, or the winnow also is part of this symbol, where you have the harvested grain in a pile, and you have to use the winnow to throw up the grain into the air as the chaff blows away, being the lighter material, and the grain falls back down again. And so that's how you separate the wheat from the chaff, is with a winnow. And so the winnow therefore becomes the symbol for air, because you're swatting flies with this air device, and you're throwing up the grain with the chaff to blow away the chaff. And so you have the air of Lilith. If you understand the creation concept of giving life by breathing, and then the spirit is also referred to as a breath of life, it's the spirit of Lilith. Why art thou fallen from heaven, spirit of Lilith? Now, how is it that Lilith is a spirit? This is where Jewish mysticism comes in with the book titled Alphabet Ben Sira. And it goes into a midrash concept of the Jews, which is a commentary to explain the misunderstood or missing portions in the Torah. And so the Jews read the Torah, and you have mankind created in chapter 1, and then in chapter 2, mankind is created again. And so how do you explain this? Well, Alphabet Ben Sira explains it. Adam had 2 wives. And the first wife, in chapter 1, they were born at the same time, the man and the woman. And Adam was the man. Lilith was the name of the woman. And they were both living in the Garden of Eden. They were both immortal. they were considered as spirits, as immortal spirits. That they had not become mortal with flesh of mortal bodies. And so they're told to multiply and replenish the earth. At the same time, don't partake of the tree that will allow you to multiply and replenish the earth. But they don't deal with that concept. They just say that Adam and Lilith are being obedient and having sex. Well, Lilith decides that she doesn't like being on the bottom in the missionary position anymore. She wants to be on top. Now, where does he get this from? Is it just because he wants to control Jewish women? Well, yeah. But it also comes from the Egyptian petroglyph of creation. The chapter 1 comes from the Egyptian Heliopolis creation glyph, where the woman is on top as the heavens of the man who is the earth, and they are separated by their father, Shu, who is the air. And that's where he's getting this from, where he's revealing that he's merely doing exactly what the Bible itself had been written as. And that's why the Alphabet Ben Sira, with the story of Lilith, is actually a legitimate passage to insert in the story of the Bible. If you understand that the Bible stories come from translations of the Egyptian petroglyphs. That's how the Bible was written. And so Alphabet Ben Sira follows that pattern and explains the missing translation from the Egyptian petroglyphs that explains why chapter 1 is a different creation of mankind than in chapter 2. Notice chapter 2, it's the same exact storyline. You have the breath of life for Adam, Shu. Same story, just worded differently. And so Lilith is demanding, do I need to go into this? I don't think I do, but that's, well, yeah, I guess I do, because I got to explain how she fell. Because Lilith got upset with Adam for not being allowed to be on top during sex, and so she went eastward into the Garden of Eden. And notice that's the direction that Adam and Eve went. That's the direction that Cain went. They all went east. And so Adam, being all alone now, complains to God, says, she left me. She didn't want to obey me. And so God created Eve for Adam, which explains the second chapter for the second woman who was created. And she was more compliant and submissive, and therefore all Jewish women must comply and submit to their husbands whenever they want sex. And in Jewish custom, on New Year's, it's customary tradition for the husband and wife to have sex in the symbolic tradition of recreating the creation story. Wouldn't that be nice in the church? To be guaranteed at least one day a year. So, yeah, that's where Lilith comes in. As Lilith did not partake of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, she remained a spirit. And in the alphabet, or in the Talmud, it talks about Elijah encountering Lilith. I think it's the Talmud. It could just be other Jewish traditions, and I think it probably is, because I think the Talmud talks about a reference to Lilith, and it's not Elijah meeting Lilith. So yeah, hear my correction. It's Jewish tradition, and it's Jewish mystical tradition because of the amulet that's a part of the story. And so, as a spirit, she now wanders the earth as an immortal spirit, and she is furious that God would create a compliant and submissive woman for Adam. And so she swears in her wrath, "If thou cursest me for doing the same thing which has been..." Remember that in Mormons in the temple text? She likewise submitted in her wrath that she would kill all newborn babies from Adam and Eve and the posterity of Adam and Eve. Specifically men babies, because those are the Adam representations of whom she has her emotional grudge with. And the male babies are the ones who are to restore the kingdom of their father, the tribal leaders, the birthright blessing son. And that's also why they then incorporate Elijah, because if you understand, Elijah is supposed to come back as a forerunner for the Christ who is to restore the kingdom of David. And the Jews have Passover, where they set out an extra place setting at their tables for the coming of Elijah during Passover. And thus Joseph Smith knew of this, because what happened in the Kirtland Temple on Passover? Elijah comes. And he understood. And so that's what he was trying to do, was say that Elijah came, I'm the Christ who is to restore the kingdom of David. And then he was murdered. His kingdom usurped, and thus needs to be restored again by another Christ, who has to have a forerunner of Elijah, or John, who is also referred to. Some say, "You are Elijah." I am not worthy to unloose the ankh of Jesus. And when Elijah confronts Lilith on the road, she's on her way to go murder a firstborn son. And Elijah wins the contest and forces her to agree that any Jewish household that has this particular amulet, she is supposed to pass over, as the coronavirus of the Egyptians passed over the the house of Israel, and saved the firstborn Moses to restore the kingdom of David of the Egyptian 18th dynasty. And so you can see how they harmonize with their additions to explain missing passages in Scripture. And so that's Lilith, is that she is a fallen star, Venus, Lucifer. And so Lucifer, even though it has this feminine aspect to it, he's often portrayed as the male, as the one to replace Christ, the usurper of Christ. Okay, and I don't see an arrow going from this. Air or spirit, breath of life. Yeah, that's that one. So where do I go from here? Panic! Okay, the Babylonian Ishtar is where we go from here. The Greek Venus is comparable to the Babylonian Ishtar. Ishtar is older, but she was represented by the star planet Venus. And so Ishtar is the exact same. Notice Babylonian. Who conquered Jerusalem? Babylon. Who destroyed the temple? Babylon. Who's the goddess, who conquered Jerusalem? Lucifer. The morning star. The goddess Ishtar. Lucifer conquered Jerusalem in 600 BC. And so then you have the Romans who destroy, but you can sort of say Venus, but that was the Greeks. But the Greeks also took over the newly created temple of the Jews and Samaritans, as the Maccabean revolt took back and restored the Jewish temple, and thus we have Hanukkah from that event. And this captivity of Judah, where the Jews were taken captivity into the city of of Babylon, is why the Bible has been mistranslated in the Hebrew text to incorporate a whole bunch of Babylonian stuff, claiming that Abraham came from Babylon of which it didn't exist until Babylon, when they soon thereafter went and conquered Jerusalem. So there was no city of during the time of Abraham. That's an anachronism. But the Jewish calendar, the Jewish language, the Jews literally became Babylonian. They got assimilated into the Babylonian culture. They became Semites. That's why we referred to anti-Jewish people or propaganda as anti-Semitic, is because the Jews were captured by Babylon and they assimilated into the Babylonian culture to become Babylonian. Despite the book of Daniel, which was trying to warn the Jews, don't be Semites, don't be Hellenistic, Greek, don't be Roman, don't be any other culture, be Jews. And the Jews are Egyptian, but they don't know it. They still think that David can be found in the archaeology in Jerusalem. No, look at Egypt. It's all over the place. There you are. I've gone over that before. And so, this concept of conquering Jerusalem by Lucifer, by Babylon, by the enemy, by evil, is a well understood theme in history. And so when you have the Book of Mormon talking about Lehi coming from Jerusalem during the time when Babylon conquers Jerusalem, and then he says 600 years hence, well, how old was Noah during the flood? I did this in the video about the flood yesterday. 600 years old. Not a coincidence, because the last days, Jesus in Matthew 24 says, as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the latter days. And so Noah is the representation of the Christ who restores the kingdom of David, and he's 600 years old. 600 years from the time Lehi leaves Jerusalem, the Christ comes. And now that doesn't refer to an actual Christ of the Gospels, because I've told you, they also come from the Egyptian petroglyphs. But because the Jews were dealing with the Romans, they were looking for a Christ to save them, and he never came. The Jews were not saved during the Roman Empire. They were conquered again. And thus the gospel stories are still continuations of the prophecies. They're just set in a different time frame during the Roman period instead. But the legitimate one in the future, I've already told you, John gives us the date, 23rd September 2017. And it's America. This is where it's happening. And the Scottish Rites Illuminati knew this. The York Rites with the Knights Templar, who are the knights to restore the kingdom of David with the royal blood or the Holy Grail. They all knew. They all used the star charts to know when the date was to be. And so when the total solar eclipse first occurred on the 21st of August 2017, which was President Monson's birthday, we also get confirmation that this is the first of 2 solar eclipses within which the destruction of America would commence. The first, the 2 eclipses having to do with the eyes of Horus. In the beginning of the Battle of Horus, to take back and restore the throne of his father Osiris, who was murdered by Set, who usurped the throne, Jacob the throne. Horus's eye, right eye first, and then his left eye also, were plucked out. If you watch the Gods of Egypt movie that came out, they have both of his eyes getting plucked out from the beginning, as at the time of the murder of Horus, or Osiris, sorry. So they sort of took Hollywood liberties. It was not an accurate portrayal of the actual Egyptian story. So understand that, but that's why his eyes were plucked out. But it was the first the right eye, then the left eye. And so we have the 2 solar eclipses. And you are probably going, well, yeah, but how? Well, the Egyptians have a 360-day calendar for their religious services, and they have a 365-day calendar for their civil calendar. And the 360-day calendar changes its new year from year to year because of the lack of 5 days and a leap year every 4 years that is required. And so for the symbolism at the beginning of the battle, you would have the new year be the beginning of the battle. And what happens at the beginning of the battle? An eye gets plucked out of Horus. A total solar eclipse. So you're looking for a total solar eclipse, the first of 2, to occur on the new year of the religious calendar, which varies from year to year, and so it does not occur but once in an existence. Guess what day the 21st of August 2017 was on the religious calendar of the Egyptians? New Year. I found that out, and my jaw dropped. How did they know? How did they know? that's just, I mean, our astronomers don't know. And you can go to Wikipedia and you can find out all the total solar eclipses, all the total lunar eclipses from infinity to infinity. But they didn't know this. How did they know? And so, yeah, Monson's birthday, fallen star, on the new year of the ancient Egyptian calendar, religious calendar, the symbol of the beginning of the end of America, the destruction of America, placing of a puppet king as Lucifer, Babylon, did to Jerusalem when they first destroyed it. When they first conquered, they put King Zedekiah on the throne. Then they came back and did a complete conquering of Jerusalem, destroying the temple, taking people hostage into Ur of Babylon. This is the symbol they're going by. So when Joseph Smith, in section 1, verse 16, talks about idols, about how Mormons create their own idols, and he's talking about Mormons specifically, because in 14 and 15, only Mormons can be sealed in the temple. So only Mormons can violate their temple covenants of marriage. He talks about Mormons creating idols and ties it to Babylon. He's not talking about Babylon being destroyed. It's already been destroyed by the Persians long, long ago. This is a code word. Just like in the Book of Mormon, it's a code word to warn us of the threat to America starting in 21st of August 2017. One total solar eclipse, and then the complete and utter destruction by the 8th of April 2024, when the second total solar eclipse occurs. That's why we're having the coronavirus now, people, during 2020. 2 eyes, 2020 vision. Third eye being the vision for seers. The Illuminati, thinking they have scientific seership, but they are using that enlightenment to cause death and destruction. And so the symbol of the inverted pentagram ties in all this symbolism together, all this meaning, all this interpretation, all this understanding, because a total solar eclipse is a fallen star in symbolism. But yet, this is when people are supposed to follow the true Christ, not the false Christ on the throne of America, who's the puppet president put in by the leader of the Scottish Rites Illuminati, whose seal would be the 2 eagles of the Scottish Rites, America following the Illuminati seal of the 1 eagle, and the pyramid with the all-seeing eye. The symbols are right before us, guys. That's why Washington, D.C., the street map, is an inverted pentagram pointing at the White House to conquer the White House and put a puppet president on the throne for the election, which would decide the president. in 2016 in order to have all this occur during his presidency. And so, yes, Jupiter, as the symbol of the man-child of Revelation chapter 12, the man-child, because Jupiter is the only planet that retrogrades in each constellation for a pregnancy period. So when he's in Virgo, the Virgin, it's as if he's in the womb of Virgo, and then eventually gives birth at the star representing Bethlehem, the house of bread star, born in Bethlehem, which is the wheat that Virgo is holding in her hand, house of bread. And that's the date that John's giving. That's the date that Isaiah was given. Child shall be born of a virgin. Matthew repeats it. Child born of a virgin. And then John. Man born of a virgin. And he gives a star symbol date for it. The moon under her feet. That's a specific date in the future. And I think, oh yeah, there's something about sacrificing virgins and sexual sacrifices of virgins in the legitimate Church of Lucifer, called by the name Lucifer so that you know that they're wolves. Hollywood perpetuates this. But there is understood of sexual performances. If you've seen certain movies, such as End of Days with Schwarzenegger, Christine was supposed to be the woman who was to have sex with Lucifer, who had possessed the man's body, who blew up the restaurant after kissing the woman, and Rosemary's Baby, the woman is sexually raped by the townspeople who had this Luciferian organization, and she gave birth to the spawn of Satan. Then you have To the Devil a Daughter. They purposely raised up this girl in the church of Ashtaroth so that he can then have sex with her when she was on her 18th birthday. And The Ninth Gate, where I was in the theater watching it, and two Mormon boys sat in front of me, and so I was able to watch their reactions throughout the movie. They had no clue what they got themselves into. They thought it would be cool, but they were at the final scene where Johnny Depp is having sex with the demoness. The guys are like, "What the hell is going on here? I don't understand," because the temple of Lucifer is in flames because of the fight that Johnny Depp and the one follower of Lucifer got into as he was trying to light himself on fire, as he thought, because Johnny Depp switched the coded symbol pages on him. Yeah, the guys had no clue why that scene was necessary. They did not understand it. When it corresponded to the picture scene of the woman riding on the back of the dragon with the light of the temple in the background, and they had no clue. I understood it. And so also the Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman movie, Eyes Wide Shut. That also illustrates that concept. And it has to do with Venus being the goddess of sexual love. And that's why Lucifer's church is understood in the concept of sacrificing virgins. Bring your daughter to the slaughter. Iron Maiden. And so Mormons need to understand why the church practices polygamy, and why Warren Jeffs, who was a breakoff of the Mormon church, was having sex with 14-year-old girls, virgins. That's why. That's where it comes from. Is Brigham Young was of the Scottish Rites Illuminati, the Church of Lucifer. That's what he established. That's what he put the symbol of Lucifer on the Nauvoo temple and dedicated it on the 1st of May rather than on the 6th of April. As Mormons decided, okay, that's the final straw for me, I'm not following Brigham Young anymore. He did it on the 1st of May, not on the 6th of April. Alpheus Cutler, specifically. And Alpheus Cutler was saying that Joseph Smith gave him other signs in the heavens to look for the restoration of the church of Joseph Smith. And then he sort of fudged the sign and started his own church when he assumed the sign was, and it wasn't the sign, and his church no longer exists, from what I understand. But Brigham Young used the symbol of Lucifer, and that's why he's doing all that he did. The brothels, polygamy, murder, even in his temple ceremony, as he was the one who created the garden story, the terrestrial kingdom story, etc. That was Brigham Young who created those passion plays. And in Brigham Young's initial temple garden story, you had Adam with his Eves all frolicking around in their loincloths. As Mormons back then, they wore the underwear up to the neck, to the wrists, and to the ankles because of their fear and paranoia of sexual immodesty. And yet Brigham Young was showing women in loincloths, which Mormons therefore understood as naked. And Brigham Young said, I would have them naked, but the Mormons are prudes. But yeah, that's why he started polygamy, guys, is because it's the Church of Lucifer, having sex with virgins. And that's why the church is restoring it. If you paid attention to the temple changes that Nelson did, and get off of the, oh, Eve now has more speaking roles, so she's becoming more equal with a man as she no longer has to obey her husband. She no longer has to wear the veil, which you women do not understand the symbolism of the importance of wearing a veil. That elevates your position, not diminishes your position. It is Islam who diminished the position by forcing women to wear veils. But again, you're allowing current culture to determine the symbolism of the past. You're redefining symbolism. And when you do that, you throw everything off. You mess everything up. But you didn't pay attention to the changes with the law of chastity, which had to do about marriage. He used the plural, and then he also said, according to the law of God. No longer the laws of the world. The church is saying to hell with the United States and their anti-polygamy, anti-bigamy laws. You must follow the law of God in regards to the law of chastity, Mormons. What is the law of God of Brigham Young? Because Joseph Smith was no polygamy, no polygamy, no polygamy in the Book of Mormon, no polygamy in the Doctrine and Covenants. 3 times in the Book of Mormon, 2 times in his Doctrine and Covenants. But under Brigham Young, polygamy. That's the law of God. And he even uses 10 virgins. Where do we get 10 virgins from in the Bible? Oh, the last days. The 10 virgins. 5 wise, 5 foolish. Huh. Wonder if there's a connection. Yeah. Sexuality is used by Lucifer. But sexuality in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's the first commandment of God to mankind. Have sex. Have babies. But when you abuse that with murder and use it to enslave women, that's not what God wanted. So, scanning the notes to see if there's anything else I needed to go over. Breath of Life, Lucifer, Seal of Russia, Seal of the United States, Washington, D.C. with a Seagull Gate. I told you that. Brigham Young used those symbols to illustrate to Mormons he's the Church of Lucifer. And Mormons don't get it. I am hoping and praying that there are Mormons who, if they understood that it is the Church of Lucifer, they would run away. I hope that's the case. I know that my second ex is one of those people, but she's given into peer pressure from her family and her previous emotional ties to the church that she grew up and raised in. And she can't separate herself without peer support. And so I hope that with the coronavirus, as Mormons don't get to go to the temple, don't go to church, that Mormons will take this as the time to say, I want nothing more to do with the Church of Lucifer. I'm out. Bye forever. But understand that the Illuminati intend to restore the Church of Lucifer when this is all done. They've got their puppet president on the throne, and they have the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This coronavirus, similar to the Passover one of Moses and the Egyptians, is the execution to depopulate the earth so that they can control those who come out of it. They're already changing our economy with this coronavirus, getting rid of all the unnecessary jobs. They are furious that entertainers and celebrities and sports heroes are getting rich off of just being entertainers. They don't own a business. And what's really pissing them off is that they're white supremacists. So blacks getting rich as a celebrity, man, that really ticked them off. And so yeah, they're purposely destroying our whole culture, our whole society, with this extermination event, so that they can control us into what they want us to be. And with the destruction of the jobs, you don't need as many people to labor for you. Thus, the extermination. That's why Trump is telling people to drink bleach. Not enough people are dying, so drink bleach. That'll kill you. Go back to work. That'll kill you. Or kill others. And people are protesting. I don't want to wear a mask. If I get coronavirus, I get it. So what? Yeah, but what about other people? You become a contagion for them to die. You become their weapon. You are doing what they want you to do, and that is murder other people. They aren't murdering people. Trump isn't murdering anybody. He gets to wash his hands. I'm innocent. It's a virus. It's not me. Even though Trump caused it and caused it to escalate. And is now telling people to continually expose themselves to it so that more people die. Not enough people are dying. That's why they are still escalating it. That's why they're refusing to give the medical tests, refusing to give the ventilators, refusing to protect the nurses and doctors. It's because they want death. But they've already got the vaccine. So take 2 years. If people still aren't willing to die, then all of a sudden, well, if after 2 years people will be sufficiently dead, and then they can come out and say, oh, hey, look, we finally got the virus, or the vaccine, sorry, and so everybody will now get this vaccine, and you will go back to work. Oh, those unnecessary jobs are no longer available for you? Oh, well, you'll have to go to the labor jobs in the fields for food and the sweatshops for clothing. You have to have a job. That's how you get money. That's how you pay for things. Slavery. That's what we've already had, but people were getting rich off of what we previously had, and they don't want that anymore. So this new system, this new economy, as you notice, the stock market is going back up again despite the collapse of the economy, the collapse of businesses, the unemployment numbers skyrocketing. They reinvested into coronavirus-friendly companies. They are preparing for the new economy when this is all done. And the news isn't quite catching on. They're still trying to give people hope that we're going to continue our lives one day as we had them. But remember Moses, when he brought the house of Israel out of Egypt, along with some Egyptians that went with them, the people complained. We want the culture and the life we had in Egypt before this coronavirus. You can't get it back. You will never get it back. We will never get back the lifestyle and the culture that we had before this. It's not coming back. Because Lucifer does not want it. He wants you controlled. He's taking away your agency. That's what he does. Your life, your liberty, your property. Those are the 3 areas of agency. And he wants to take away and control you by having taken away those 3 areas from you. You must comply and conform, or you're denied. That's the society that China has implemented with their facial recognition social economy. If you conform and comply, you get elevated to have more privileges. You can buy a second computer game because you complied and conformed to having just one, playing it for only an hour at a time, and so now you get 2, and then you get 3, up to 9, I think. But if you can't control your gameplay, they monitor it, and they know, and you get punished, and so a game gets taken from you until you have nothing if you continue to resist and not follow the rules. They control the lives of China, of the Chinese. That's what they want with America and the whole world. And they know that we would not allow it if they just immediately said, okay, you guys are now in slavery and in bondage, you will do what we tell you to do. No, we get guns. We will use those guns to defend our lifestyles. But if you cause a coronavirus to take away your lifestyles for you, to force your lifestyles to change, then they get to claim, hey, it's not us, it's coronavirus, nothing we can do about it. We're trying to get the government restored and the economy restored, but man, things are tough. Nothing we can do about it. So that's Lucifer. That's the symbol of Lucifer in the church. That's why Nelson was slow to close the church. He's a medical doctor. He knows you're supposed to immediately shut everything down. He knew that he needed to get the bishop's storehouses in operation to have a supply of food for Mormons, if not for Utah, if not for the nation, if not for the world. They have trillions of dollars that they could have spent on this in preparation for this, which they themselves knew was going to happen because they are part of the cause. So understand that. The answer was right in front of you guys the whole time. It's the symbol of Lucifer. And Nelson redefined it by putting Jesus on top of the church. And here we are in the destruction of America, as none of you now know who to look for. They have deceived you all these centuries as to who to look for in the latter days. You're thinking of some God that does not exist, who's going to come back and miraculously save you, and he's not coming. So I hope you guys are well. I hope you got your money. I didn't. I didn't even get the money from Equifax. The $125 that Equifax said, oh, we can't give that money to them because we'd go out of business. And so we can't restore the damage caused to everybody and give them the $125 each. And yet my identity's been stolen. It's been sold on the black market. It's been used to hack my checking account twice. Do you know how frustrating it is to redo that? So, this is the chaos that they planned. We're in it, and we're getting screwed royally, because they're purposely trying to murder us, turning us into survival of the fittest economy, as food shortages are about to occur, as we won't have money to pay for food, as we won't have money to pay for other items because of the high unemployment. And those who have jobs, you're going to lose your jobs because the system cannot sustain itself. I went over it yesterday with the new reports that are indicating that it's going faster than we anticipated by a week so far. It was supposed to be 3 weeks from the time we opened when the hospitalizations would occur. It's 2 weeks. It didn't take long at all. We're getting rushes to the hospital already, and as a result, people are buying the more important survival items, such as food, rather than luxury items, decorative items, And so all those businesses are closing down, and more will close down as people will lose their jobs to pay for food. And so food companies will go out of business, not just because they don't have food, but because nobody's buying it anyway. As people have to fight for survival. And where is Zion, the place of safety, refuge, peace? Doesn't exist. You guys are looking for the wrong Christ.